podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello dear listeners, welcome to Achtung Millwall. My name is Nick Hart, and you and I, dear listener, are speaking to each other in the immediate aftermath, the day after the signature of Macaulay Langstaff, the club's new star signing, signed yesterday, as I record these thoughts and notes from Notts County, where he's had a glittering track record, 29 goals during the 23-24 season of Notts County in the National League, non-league football, of course. We understand that, but the boys scored goals through the non-league levels. 27 years old, so quite late in his career to be signing, but we, of course, join everyone across the Mill scene in wishing Macaulay all the best. A big welcome to the Den. It's a big step up to the Championship, isn't it, dear listeners? But, if you score goals at any level, then that's always going to be good news. Let's hope that working with Neil Harris and learning some of the tricks of the trade that Neil did so well during his time will benefit Macaulay. Macaulay Langstaff signed for Mill yesterday. Today is June the 9th, so July the 8th yesterday, signature of our new star sign. We are hoping, of course, for more as the pre-season progresses, but that's a very, very good start by Millwall. But now then, listeners, signing players from non-league. The last one that I can think of that was a success was Lee Gregory, who came to us from non-league FC Halifax Town, if memory serves, scored well for us. But me being the twisted mind that I have, dear listeners, puts the idea of signing players from non-league, which is always going to be, a gamble, with the best will in the world, puts me in mind of a gamble that went wrong, dear listeners. I'm going to draw you into the strange tale, the strange case of Chris Kelly, all the way back in my youth, 1975. I was 14 years old, going towards 15 at the time. Chris Kelly, known to the world as the Leatherhead Lip. Let me just take you now to the youthful voice of John Motson ahead of a famous FA Cup tie in which Leatherhead ran First Division at the time, Leicester City close at Filbert Street. Just play a very, very short clip from that.
The number 6 has passed a fitness test, and at number 9 there's Chris Kelly, the man whose goal beat Brighton and the man whose talk has given an added edge to this intriguing tie. Leicester haven't allowed Kelly's taunts to upset them. Indeed, they allowed Leatherhead to use their training ground yesterday. The news from their team is that Keith Weller is now off the transfer list, but Jeff Blockley, their new signing, is not eligible for this round, so they're unchanged. So this classic David and Goliath battle about to get underway. Leatherhead the side to kick off, and should you be watching this match in black and white, Leicester are wearing the white stockings and Leatherhead have the darker socks. They're playing from the right, the amateur side, in the first half. Oh, Kelly got there! Chris Kelly has done what he said he would do, but even he must have doubted whether he would have made it 2-0 to Leatherhead in 27 minutes.
There we are. That game would finish in FA Cup heartbreak for the Leatherhead Tanners, starring Chris Kelly. A 3-2 loss at the old Filbert Street ground. Leatherhead that season had, just to explain who Chris Kelly was and why he came to Millwall's attention, Leatherhead had clearly a good FA Cup run, including a win at then I think they were third division Brighton and Hove Albion, managed at the time by former Brian Clough co-manager Peter Taylor. So this was seen a win at the Goldstone ground for non-league Leatherhead, Isthmian League Leatherhead back in those times, was a massive win. And the driving force behind the Leatherhead side that season was the larger-than-life character, the personality, the Leatherhead Lip himself of Chris Kelly. Now, just looking at a fantastic pen picture of Chris Kelly in the Neil Fissler Millwall Who's Who book, which is essential reading for any self-respecting Millwall fan. Chris Kelly signed for Millwall for just 11 games. This would not be a happy ending story, dear listeners. Signed from Leatherhead in the wake of seizing the media's imagination, in truth. Back in the 70s, there's a picture of Chris Kelly with a very 1970s look. There's a fantastic article by When Saturday Comes that I will come back to shortly, in which it draws attention to Chris's resemblance. I think it's a bit of a stretch personally, but they compare him with star of the Confessions of a Window Cleaner, Confessions of a Driving Instructor, Robin Asquith. He was like a general comic, very mild sex comedy of the times. A star, and it was like a white boy, Flash Harry type, and as was Chris Kelly, who was given to shooting his mouth off, often as When Saturday Comes puts it, in various stages of inebriation in the immediate aftermath of some pretty good FA Cup wins in this particular season. Leatherhead, obviously a non-league side at that time, had never really touched the general consciousness of the public, but this time this was a great FA Cup run. I've got a couple of reports here. This is from the Sunday Mirror where they beat Brighton 1-0. Some great input from Chris Kelly, and just to quote the piece here, this is by Eric Nichols of the Sunday Mirror. Billy Miller, the smiling Leatherhead boss, said, "Right now I could walk on top of the stands in the wake of this 1-0 win at the Goldstone Ground. And what about Kelly, the striker wanted by Millwall? I don't think he'll go," said Eric Miller. "I hope not. He's got a good job and he doesn't need the money." That job apparently was an upholsterer. He was working as an upholsterer. I don't know what kind of money upholsterers make, listeners, then or now particularly, but clearly working as an upholsterer and playing non-league football was earning Chris Kelly a pretty penny, but he couldn't resist the glamour of the Den when we came chasing after him in the wake of this cup run. A 1-0 win at Brighton earned a big fixture at Leicester that would be the fourth round of that season's FA Cup, and a huge amount of media interest. The reason for that being that Chris Kelly was not afraid to shoot his mouth off to the newspapers, and in this era of personality sportsmen, this was the dawning of the age of the kind of Muhammad Ali driven, big talking sportsman, and shooting your mouth off to the media was, we put bums on seats. I think, the modern day scene that we see so much of now on social media, especially in boxing, but to some extent, I suppose, football to some level, really began at this era, and Kelly was an archetype of this period. Bishop Stortford in the first round and got past them. Leatherhead beat Colchester in round 2. Brighton under Peter Taylor, who I think had referred to Leatherhead as minnows, so there's a bit of bants backwards and forwards, led to a famous fixture at Leicester City. One or two articles here in which they refer to Chris Kelly's celebrity status. Here is a big article. This is in the Daily Mirror, the 23rd of January 1975. Kelly's victory. So they've got themselves into this fourth round tie at Leicester, who are a First Division side at this point. With a few decent players in their team as well, including ex-Millwall player Keith Weller. So Kelly's victory, says the article. Kelly says, "When I start to do my shuffle," the Muhammad Ali shuffle was a famous boxing move, and Kelly claimed to have an equal shuffle to the great Ali. But he says, "When I start to shuffle, they will fall." This is Leicester. This is by Jack Steggles. Leicester star Keith Weller needn't bother turning up for the fourth round against part-timers Leatherhead, says Chris Kelly, a man with a Muhammad Ali type belief in his own ability. Kelly told me, "We all know that Weller walks out of a match at half-time recently. He was also a personality in his own right, Keith Weller. He'll do himself a favour," says Kelly, "this time if he doesn't turn up at all for Leicester, because they're going to be in for a tough old time. If Weller and his Leicester teammates saw my televised replay of my goal that knocked out Brighton, it must have frightened the life out of them. But I've got news for them. I've scored dozens of goals better than that, and I've got something really special stored up for Saturday." So big talk Big talk by Chris Kelly. This seized the imagination of the tabloids. This is, as I say, this is by the Daily Mirror. Kelly's goal, it says here, that's flattened Brighton, was scored after what he called his Ali shuffle. And showman Chris even sings his own praises in true Ali style. He actually wrote a poem for Leicester ahead of this game, the fourth round fixture at Filbert Street. So he'd written his own poem. Do you want me to read it? Of course you do. Of course you do. They've got it printed here. You wouldn't let me go if I didn't read you Chris's poem. So let me see if I can do it justice, listeners. The Leicester I can't do an Ali voice. It should be read in the voice of Muhammad Ali, but I can't do that. The Leicester defence won't know what to do. When I start to shuffle, they won't have a clue. I'll drop my shoulder and swivel my hips. Some will fall over. Others will slip. I've got a new trick that I want to test. They'll think that we have resurrected George Best. He wasn't dead. Anyway, this shuffle's so quick that Leicester won't realise what's going on in front of their eyes. They'll think it's magic they ain't seen before. And while they're working it out, we'll go on to score. Now, he's not exactly Lord Byron, is he, dear listeners? But anyway, that was his poem carried by the Daily Mirror. He says here, because there's quite a large half-page piece on him, this is the level of celeb that he captured. People will have labelled me a comedian and think I'm joking when I talk about my Ali shuffle, but I'm deadly serious. Fans who watch the World Cup on television, this would be the 74 World Cup last summertime, marvelled at Johan Cruyff's, put himself in the same category, at Johan Cruyff's ability to skin defenders by flicking the ball back between his legs. I was doing that 4 years ago, so Cruyff must have copied that from me, says Chris Kelly. Our piece then goes on to say, in case you're ready to dismiss Kelly as a big head, I should point out that the fellow can actually play. He was skillful. He showed his skill in the footage of the 3-2 loss in the end. They went 2-0 up, including goals, and a good chance for Kelly to bury it at 3-0 in the first half. Well worth a look on Match of the Day, on YouTube, Match of the Day footage. Another time, another place. It's an insight into 1970s football, which still seems quite recent to me, but it's a long 50 odd years ago. But there we are. 3-2 win in the end. Another piece here, extras. There's a picture this time of Chris Kelly with Dickie Guy, a Wimbledon goalkeeper, also had a good run in the cup that season, 2 non-league sides. And in this one, Chris Kelly's wearing his all-white Millwall kit with MFC on the chest. He says here that Millwall had come up with the goods, with a contract worthy of him, worthy of his skill, because the upholstering and the non-league football was clearly paying him well. They were made men of the month by the Daily Mirror, and each received a magnificent statuette and a cheque for £100. Not bad at that time, but there we are. An unknown pattern maker, Kelly, 25, became a star, as it says here. This is by Harry Miller of the Mirror. Became a star when he shimmied and shot Brighton out of the cup in the third round. Millions watching TV thrilled to striker Kelly's skills and laughed along with his outrageous post-match extrovert comments. So signed up by Millwall because Gordon Jago, our manager of the time, loved a bit of pizzazz. One of the memories I have of Jago at this time was his constant desire. In the end, he would leave the den and go to America, but he had a certain penchant for the whole kind of glamour of Americanized sport, and I think he saw Chris Kelly's very much part of that. He signed for the Lions. Kelly signed for the Lions in late January. Article here. This is again, I think, from the Mirror. Calypso Kid for Millwall. Leatherhead striker Chris Kelly is set to sign for Millwall and go straight into the team for the second division match at Bolton on Saturday away at Bolton, which finished as a 2-0 loss. Manager Gordon Jago determined not to lose the player. He has trailed for weeks. Yesterday increased his original offer, and he will meet Kelly tonight as this is being written. Kelly, 25, says now they are talking business. Millwall are at last, prepared to offer realistic wages. Jago offered to better terms after Kelly's outstanding display in the FA Cup tie at Leicester last Saturday and installed him as the hottest property outside the Football League. The question then arises, says the article, will Kelly be prepared to tailor his flamboyant style to the needs of Millwall? Certainly not, says Kelly. I'm a Calypso merchant. I'm a Calypso merchant, and anyone who tries to make me conform like the other robots has got no chance. So there we are. He signed for Millwall. Now, as Neil, in his piece at the start of this show, captured so well, just 11 games. Picture of Chris Kelly walking into the Den, the old offices there on Coldblow Lane, with his Millwall bag slung across his shoulder nonchalantly. All the air of a 70s star, kind of Charlie George meets Robin Asquith meets, as my mum would have put it, a long-haired sloosh. Flash. Did he deliver? No, he fucking well didn't, listeners. He was useless. I remember coming along to his first game, which, if memory serves, let me just look it up before I make a monkey of myself. It was in front of a bigger crowd than normal. We got about 10,000 in the Den for the home debut. He played in an away loss at Bolton. Let me just check this before I continue. So there we are. He played in the Bolton 2-0 loss on Saturday, February the 1st. I was at this game versus Oldham, which finished as a 0-0 draw. Now, this was a difficult season for the Lions. We were struggling at the wrong end of the table and we'll get relegated. It was a relegation season. Jago clearly thinking that a bit of flash and pizzazz, a bit of creativity maybe from the man and the hottest property in football, Chris Kelly, would turn our season around. Well, that turned into... that never happened. I remember the disappointment of this 0-0 draw. I think everyone that went along expected something special from Chris Kelly. We never ever saw anything special from Chris Kelly in the 11 games that he played for us. And we would indeed finish up relegated that particular season, third from bottom. The Mirror here features a story after all that positive Mr. Saturday night type stuff. Kelly crisis hints the Daily News is in April after a very disappointing run of results for the Lions, leaving us deep in relegation trouble. Millwall manager, Kelly crisis. Millwall manager is last night desperately trying to trace his striker, Chris Kelly, following reports that the former Leatherhead amateur had walked out of the club. So just 3 months he lasted at the Den. Kelly signed for Millwall in January. Now it's claimed he regrets joining Millwall. I certainly regret him joining us, to be absolutely frank. And I think when I was too young to really cotton on to the deluge of comment that would have come his way from the Coldblow Lane faithful. But I think the Mill crowd were very sorry that he joined us as well. Brilliant article summing up Chris Kelly's careers in When Saturday Comes in 2015. You can find the link to this on Chris Kelly's Wikipedia page. Just going on about his style, very much the shooting your mouth off was very much the vogue in the 70s. There was a famous interview in which Muhammad Ali went on Michael Parkinson, and he was famed for his, predicting the round in which he would put his opponent down. This was around the era of the Ali Frazier, so the idea of sportsmen that talked up their performance, gave it the modern day, I suppose you would call it, I don't know if it's trash talking, but that all stems from this kind of era. And it captures it quite nicely. And it just also touches on the strangeness of the celebrity that he briefly captured. His style faded very quickly. The fact that he went to the Den and had been giving it large in the papers about professional footballers not being as naturally talented as amateurs, as it was then, including him. And then I think he got found out a little bit by the pros, who were, in actual fact, as good as, if not better than. The Leatherhead Lip was his moniker. He went back to Leatherhead, basically, at the end of these 11 games in 1975. I remember the decline and fall of Chris Kelly very well. But at the age of 14, you tend to get carried away with the fizz and glamour of the pizzazz of the moment, and he was very much a celebrity of the moment. And as you'll find out in the end, that fades very, very fast. Chris Kelly faded very, very fast. He went back to Leatherhead. In time, once he stopped playing, became their commercial manager. And I read in Neil's piece that he retired to France in the end after all of that. So Jago, called Jago, of course, would take us to some success the following season in the winning promotion in 75, 76, but even he too would in the end fade away, and he would go to America, make his life and career in America. The strange case of Chris Kelly. The lesson being, don't get carried away with fizz and pizzazz, dear listeners. And don't get carried away with upholsterers who think they're better than the professionals. There we are. I don't think that's Macaulay Langstaff. I've got to fight the urge to say Macaulay Culkin, dear listeners. Macaulay Langstaff, I think he comes across very, very well. And the total contrast with the false kind of dawn that was Chris Kelly in 1975. There it is. The strange case of Chris Kelly, the Leatherhead Lip. Hope you've enjoyed this little short from Achtung Millwall. I shall be back soon, dear listeners. I'm away for a few days now, so until the next edition of Achtung Millwall, maybe nearer the season. And don't forget to tune into Wall Talk now. I've got to cross promote. Do come back to us next edition. Until then, dear listeners, thank you for listening. And arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
Sports Social Podcast Network.